You can see they're trying to rally. You can see they're setting their artillery up there. The other thing that's, I mean, some of the Confederates write about this right at the time period is that they only took one gun from the 1st Corps Artillery Brigade.
Really?
Right, one gun. And they took 2 guns from the 11th Corps Artillery Brigade, from Heckman's battery. They overran 2 guns on the edge of the college campus. So almost all the Federal artillery gets away. It was a close, really close. I mean, Charles Wainwright writes in his journal that he said when he was on his horse getting his artillery off of the ridge, he said there was Confederates on the breastworks that had been built in the woods in front of the seminary, shouting at him to surrender.
Leave your guns.
So
leave your guns.
So it just
leave the ammo.
It just tells you that, I mean, man, it is like hailing distance away. They're really, really close. In fact, he even says he was amazed that he got away with a loss of only 1 gun.
Yeah.
So Ewell gets this order from Lee: take Cemetery Hill if practicable, but don't bring on a general engagement. And as you said, Pat, I think you're exactly right that Ewell interprets that to mean if I can take that hill and I don't commit Lee to a battle here,
do it.
Do it.
Yeah.
If I'm going to commit him to the battle here and it's going to continue, don't do it, right? So the other point that I make to people is they're in Ewell's shoes now. I'm like, okay, you're Ewell. Who's helping you? So you have to attack the hill from the most difficult point, right, the northern slope. So is there another Army Corps here?
Nope.
Yeah. 3rd Corps.
Oh.
AP Hill.
Right. Dude, I forgot AP Hill was here.
What's AP Hill doing? Is he going to help you?
No, he's up here.
Is Army headquarters coordinating with AP Hill to get AP Hill to help you?
No.
You got to negotiate with AP Hill. So he does. Ewell sends somebody to Hill and says, hey, you know, we're going to try and storm this hill. Can you support us? And Hill says, no. I don't. My men are used up. I mean, they don't got anything in the tank. And my 3rd Division, Richard Anderson's division, has been halted by Lee west of town, up above Marsh Creek, along what's called, gosh, I just forgot the name, Belmont Schoolhouse Ridge.
Is this where Lee is having his "what the hell is going on" conniption fit? Is this like, halt, everybody stop, what is happening? Is that moment? Or
no, I
think
think
that happened earlier.
I think this is the moment where Lee is like, okay, if I can take that hill with Ewell, he thinks he can take it, good. However, there's 5 Union Army Corps and 2 cavalry divisions I haven't accounted for. I need a reserve. I'm not committing my reserve because they may have to go that way to protect my flank if the enemy come up in that direction. So I think that's what Lee's thinking, but the point of all of this is Lee is offering Ewell no assistance, no command and control, no support, no nothing. And Ewell also gets a report that there's a large Union force east of Gettysburg that's been sighted. He thinks it's a bogus report. It isn't, actually. It was actually the 12th Corps marching around out there.
Yep, doing what the 12th Corps does here.
And he orders 2 brigades of Early's division to go out, and they go all the way out to where Walmart is.
Oh.
To protect the left flank of the Army.
Good
so
deals.
that's 2 of the brigades you would use to attack the hill. So now you're really left with 2 combat-ready brigades, because none of Rhodes' brigades are combat-ready. They've all been bloody. Right? Even Ramseur's brigade, which didn't take that many casualties, is a really good unit. They've taken a lot of Union prisoners. The units are kind of scattered. It's going to take a while to bring them together. So I think Ewell finally comes to the conclusion, like, that's too tough for nothing to crack. I don't have the manpower to do it. He makes a decision. Now he gets condemned for it by Confederate officers in the Army who
didn't have to make the decision.
Well, they look back on this. This is how we lost the battle. This was the chance that we had. This is why we lost the battle. We should have taken it. And then you can always have these officers like Trimble, who's like this spare major general that just kind of came along, and they end up using him, and he gets shot.
I love that.
July
the
3rd.
Spare major general.
He knew there was always job openings after a battle. But you know, Trimble, he can write anything he wants, because particularly after Ewell dies after the war, Trimble can claim anything he wants. He can put words in Ewell's mouth.
There's nobody to say otherwise.
And unless there's a staff officer who challenges what he says, so some of these, like the Douglas Level Freemans and others, if they use people like Trimble as their sources, you might go, well, this guy's a veteran. I mean, he was there. Well, he may not be telling the truth. We've had a little experience with that in America, in our politics, right?
Yeah.
Not telling the truth,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so
Yeah.
people sometimes don't tell the truth because they want to elevate themselves, they want to conceal something, or they want to protect someone or whatever. I think at the time there probably were some people who felt like that was a blunder not to take a pill. They didn't necessarily blame Ewell. They were like, I don't know who was responsible for the decision, but it was a bad decision. Like there's a guy in Perrin's brigade, he was one of the colonels, and he wrote this really scathing letter right after the battle. Like, that was the time. We had to take that hill. We should have taken that hill. I don't know why we didn't take the hill. You know, he just went on and on and on in this letter. But he wasn't saying that was Ewell's fault. He was saying it was somebody's fault.
He saw the moment. He didn't know the players. He just saw the moment for what it was.
So I mean, in summary, what I would wrap up and say is that the Confederates won a decisive tactical victory. The Union won an operational victory on July the 1st, or even in some sense a strategic victory. Now, I can't say it's a strategic victory on July 1st because they haven't won the battle yet. They got to win the battle. So if you say they won the battle on July the 1st, then everything Meade did doesn't matter, and it did matter. It mattered a lot. Meade made a lot of good decisions, and one of the best decisions that he makes, that again he doesn't get any credit for, is he's the guy who sent Reynolds here.
Yeah.
He's the guy who put Reynolds in charge of the left wing of the Army. He's the guy who empowered Reynolds. So that's the sign of a good commander who delegates authority. So he delegated that authority, and Reynolds, he knew he could trust Reynolds to make the right decisions. So we can see A.P. Hill delegated authority to Henry Heath. That didn't work out so well, right? So sometimes you got to know your man. Yeah.
I think that what you've just described for us, as I'm listening to, kind of is a microcosm of what the war is. If you look at it, there's a bunch of moments with the Confederate Army, various Confederate armies in the field, really bloody the nose of the Union opposition they're facing. But what is the blood worth at the end of the day? We talk about Chancellorsville a lot, right? Like Chancellorsville is a epic Confederate victory, right? Stunning Union beatdown, but we always ask, like, what did the Confederacy gain from it? Really, nothing. I mean, they got some newspaper, they got some morale, but like, great, you bloodied the nose, but the army was still intact. Like, there's more to fighting than just that fight part. And that's, Matt works at the top secret site where that is a huge part of the story, right? On paper, it's a federal loss, but that betrays the entire effect of what that battle at Monocacy Junction is. Again, we didn't say official titles or anything. There just was a battle there. There may or may not be a Park Service site at it. Right. Jeez, people. I didn't dox my co-host or anything. But in reality, like, that's a microcosm of the war. Even when my first experiences as a young kid studying this was, wow, the Confederacy wins a lot of skirmishes, wins a lot of battles, wins a lot of momentary fights, but like, later in the war, what's the grand scheme of it? Like, Overland is where I really look at this a lot, because Grant will start to lose a fight and just disengage and move and keep advancing. And Lee at that point has a choice: do I let him pass me and take the capital and emotionally this is over, or do I, engage? And that's sort of what this is here on day one. The Confederate forces pushed them out of Herbst Woods. I mean, they pushed them out of town, but what did you gain? Nothing.
Yeah, it's. I think Lee, in the Confederacy, in the high command of the Confederacy, understood the war better than anybody in the entire Confederacy. Because Davis and many of the other Confederate senior generals viewed the war as, we'll wear them down. Right. We're going to defend our borders. We're going to wear them down.
We're going to hold
and
every piece of southern ground.
Lee saw that from the very beginning as a losing strategy.
It's entirely untenable.
He's like, you're going to lose the war if you do that. You've got to go after them, and you have to win. In fact, what I always tell people is, I said, if you really want to understand Lee, the best book I have ever read about understanding Lee's strategic thinking in the war is Joe Harsh's first book, which is called Confederate Tide Rising. It's not a long book, but his assessment of Lee is I think is just dead on about how Lee viewed the war. And one of the things he says in there, Lee said, we have to win heavy victories. And you look at it, like, what does he mean by heavy victories? I think what Harsh wrote is what he meant by that is we need to do a lot of damage to the enemy to erode the morale of the northern people, but not take the same damage. So if you're Lee, you're going to be extremely frustrated by a battle like Gaines' Mill. You win the battle, but you took huge losses. Why did you take huge losses? Because your army is not experienced yet in coordinating attacks and executing attacks. He plans an amazing operation at Glendale that might have destroyed the Army of the Potomac if they could have executed it.
So Jackson was sleeping?
But well, the thing was, it was just the command structure was not really effective yet. So I think Lee, if you understand how Lee views the war, how the Confederacy needs to win the war, Gettysburg makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. Antietam makes sense.
Right.
Those things all make sense. And yeah, it's true, when you fight a battle like Chancellorsville, Lee would be the first person to agree with you. Like, yeah, I won the battle. That was a brilliant victory. But what did we gain? Yeah, we hurt them, but it was on our soil, so they can spin it as we're still carrying the war to
We're
the
still
enemy.
here. We're in Virginia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a whole different ball game. You know, if you're in Boston and you're reading the rebels are in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
So one of the things I used to tell people when I was working at the park the last years I was there is remember immediately after September 11th how people reacted. I had two people who worked for me. It's kind of funny now, but it wasn't necessarily funny then. They thought Al Qaeda was going to probably blow up the electric map building, the visitor center.
Oh, yeah, I mean, natural target for democracy, honestly.
They were
right here in
actually
Gettysburg,
afraid of
Pennsylvania.
that because their thinking was, well, I mean, this is a shrine in America. I mean, and this is a place a lot of people gather. I mean, I'm really concerned. They're going to blow a mall up, man. They're not going to blow the electric map building up.
Yeah.
But what it gets at is people get crazy when they see something like the rebels are in
Right.
and then if the rebels rout the Union Army at Gettysburg, that's why when people say to me, well, yeah, the Confederacy could have never won the war, I'm like, I do not believe that for a minute.
It's part of the lost cause, too.
I think it is entirely possible that they could have won the war and that the South could have won its independence and that it would have, I mean, it's entirely possible. Because if McClellan wins the 1864 election, a very plausible scenario is that a ceasefire takes place. Ceasefire with the Confederacy. Because you're not going to remobilize the people of the North to carry the war to the South again and make those sacrifices and fight against even better fortified positions. Not going to happen. I mean, so the odds that they're going to win the independence were probably fairly long, but Lee, his strategy was the one, if they were going to win it, his strategy was the one that was going to win it. Was it expensive in manpower? Yes.
Absolutely.
Was what Reynolds did out here expensive in manpower, trading men for time? Yes. But did the Union win the battle? Yes.
Yes.
So that's the point, is that sometimes we generals have to make incredibly cruel decisions that if I spend these lives today, I'm going to save all these lives tomorrow. You can make the same argument with Sherman's March to the Sea. I mean, everybody can complain that, oh my God, they did all this wreckage and they were burning things and everything like that. They're like, yeah, but how many people were saved by that advance to the sea?
Immediately, I had two examples pop in my head not related to this war. I'm from Maryland. We're the old line state because Washington deploys the Maryland line to sacrifice those lives to let the rest of that army get away. And then, honestly, in a much, much more macabre sense, Harry Truman makes the same decision in 1945
Yes, he does.
when he is being presented with, here's what it's going to look like when we invade mainland Japan. And he says,
does.
you know what, I'm going to trade, and not to be crass, but I'm going to trade a couple, tens of thousands, couple 100,000 Japanese lives with two bombs versus millions of American and Japanese lives with a full landing force. And so here's my question to you out there that put my Ranger hat on. Like, could you make that decision? Like, I could, like, when you stop people halfway across the field and say, why are they here?
Right.
I would say, could you, if you were Ewell, could you attack that hill without your support, with knowing that you're going to have to ask your men to do all that heavy lifting
After what they've already done.
That's what I mean. Is like, could you? And there's a reason why we say war is hell. War is, it's right that it's so terrible if we should go too far. There's so many versions of this saying, this sucks. And it takes a certain type of person to make decisions. And obviously, you make decisions and you draw attention. That's why you blah, blah, blah. But it's just, as I'm listening to what you're saying, there's so many other places you can look for the same mentality.
Yes.
And honestly, what would you do? Because I can tell you, I don't want to make that decision. Like, straight up, I'm glad I host this podcast. I'm glad that we get to do this as armchair interpreters, because, like, in no way do I want that awesome responsibility. And remember, awesome's not always sweet or rad, like I say with my weird lexicon. Like, that is a powerful moment, and I don't think I have the guts to make it. So,
yeah, it's well, I think nobody said it better than Sherman when he said war is cruelty.
Yeah.
And you can't define it. And you can't change it, or define it. Yeah. So it's anyway. That's that's kind of how the first day of the battle ends, and then they've set up what's going to be the Titanic battle of July 2nd and July 3rd.
You can't say Titanic on this show anymore. We're actually legally banned from saying it, because
right.
we said it so much for the first 3.5 seasons of our show that the Titanic Corporation's like, look, we got a lot to focus on with this sub thing. Like, you got to stop saying it. So yeah, we got a cease and desist from White Star. We didn't even know they were around anymore. Sorry, Brucey. But no, you're right. Like, it's funny. We're back to this moment. This is all a prelude moment in the moment itself, and it's devastating. Scott, thank you for coming on the History Things podcast, not just for the 2 episodes in the War Department, but thank you for coming out here on the grounds with us, and putting the old hat back on and standing on the field. We do appreciate that. For those of you who are looking to catch up with the episodes with Scott, if you don't follow us on the actual podcast for some reason, you're here just hanging on social media, jump into Spotify, jump into Apple Podcasts, and pull up the episode July 1st, or I guess June 30th. It came out June 30th with Scott Hartwig here, where we talk about the battle itself. And then come back on August 1st to hang out with us and Scott again as we talk about the memory of this battle. Days, weeks, years, decades, and honestly in the current day that we live in, because Gettysburg has still got an effect on people.
We're still out here today.
That's right. So anyway, we thank you all for hanging out with us from the field. Lots more coming from the History Things podcast as the 160th commemoration. I don't like saying celebration.
No,
I guess
commemoration.
technically, if you listen to our memory episode, this is technically supposed to be a celebration battlefield, the Union victory, right?
It is. It's a commemorative.
Initially, I like commemorative.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a much safer word, and I don't like to celebrate blood like that.
Yeah,
but we're doing lots more. We're hanging out with Cody Aish. We're doing some stuff with Alexander Hayes. So look out for all that stuff coming up from the History Things podcast. As always, for our guest today, Scott Hartwig, I'm Pat McGuire. This is Matt Borders, saying we'll catch you all later.
Good night.